Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by the Nyaradza Group. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Professor Welshman Ncube, the Vice President of the MDC-Alliance of Zimbabwe, a businessman and a leading lawyer. Enjoy this thought-provoking conversation. Professor Welshman Ncube, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor. I know you are busy. You've been running around the countryside, meeting chiefs. Welcome. Thank you for creating the time.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you very much.
Tell me, Welsh, you say you've just been meeting with chiefs. What are the chiefs saying?
Well, it's actually a distressing and a depressing picture that they paint of the conditions of the people that they lead in the communities. They speak of deprivation, they speak of general poverty, they speak of families who go for weeks and weeks without access to even a single dollar. They speak of the frustrations as the rain season sets in, all families without immediate access to seed, without immediate access to fertilizer, having to wait and hope for the state to provide those, and having to endure all sorts of political manipulation in order to be in the good books of those who have the power to distribute those products that are so essential for their livelihood. So it's not a very, very pleasing picture. One hopes that one day our country will get out of this bind and this misery that our people face.
Wow. You know, as you're talking Welsh right now, it pulls at your heartstrings because these are human beings. What are you saying to them?
Well,
can you say anything?
Yes, we have to make sure that we have hope. We have to be saying to people it doesn't matter how difficult it is. We have to say that there is always light at the end of the tunnel, that it is within our power to change the condition of our people and the condition of ourselves. And that, in fact, that is the essence of democracy, that we don't need to take guns, we don't need to fight anyone. All we need right now is to be committed to the democratic processes, to go and register as voters, no matter how difficult the processes are made to be. We just keep encouraging people, we keep encouraging traditional leaders to encourage their own people to register to vote and to seek peaceful transition, peaceful change, in the hope that their vote will count one day, that we can have change in this country which will deliver to people.
In the hope that their vote will count one day, you are selling them this hope. You have been selling us this hope for a long time. If a pushback, Welsh, is one of the chiefs that are sitting there and listening to you and say, Welsh, I've heard you say this for 40 years. Maybe 40 years is an exaggeration. Let me say 20 years. I mean, what, register to vote, Welsh, it hasn't changed my life. It hasn't changed my condition. What do you say when I push back as a chief and I'm talking to you like that?
It may be so. It may have taken this long. It may have been difficult. Lives even have been lost in the process. But there are inspiring examples in the region for people to believe that change is possible. We have examples in Zambia, we have examples in Malawi. They might not have the full change that they expected, but change is possible when people come together, when people unite. In particular, when the young people, me and you are in the twilight zones of our lives, but they are young people. They're young people, many of whom are in the diaspora, many of them can't even afford a car, have no homes, they have no prospects under these conditions. So, but if people come together, if people unite, young people in particular, like they did in Zambia, they take their own future into their own hands, it is possible. You cannot be cheated forever if you are united, if you vote in your numbers, and you make sure that you protect your vote, you make sure that the powers that are will listen to you when you vote in your millions in a particular way. That's what we say.
So the president comes back from Zambia after seeing the elections and says, if you think what happened in Zambia is going to happen here, you're fooling yourselves.
Trevor, this takes me back. You remember you and me as teenagers at high school in Mzilikazi, just before independence. You remember the vibrancy, the hope. You remember when we were there, the Lancaster House negotiations were taking place, they were successful. You recall that the first vote in 1980, which was taking place, we young boys, were idealistic, who believed in a different Zimbabwe. And regrettably, it is that dream, it is that idealism which has been betrayed by the nationalists who led the liberation struggle. The Zimbabwe you and me foresaw that time, the Zimbabwe we yearned for has not come. What we have is this condition now. So that statement in itself, that statement to say, if you think what happened in Zambia can happen here, you are fooling us. What does it mean? It basically means someone is saying, if you think democracy can prevail here, you are fooling yourself. If you think the people of Zimbabwe will have a right to vote for the government of their choice, like the Zambians did, you are fooling yourself. That actually tells you that you have a nationalist group which has betrayed the aspirations, the ideals of the liberation struggle, which was about the freedom of the people, which was about the livelihood of people. But we are basically saying now, you are holding us in bondage. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand this betrayal. We need to fight against it peacefully. We need to use our vote, no matter how constrained it is, to make sure that we change the condition of our people.
There is a clear, for me, a clear intent on the part of President Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF, particularly President Mnangagwa, in terms of concentration of power. But it's clear what the intention is, Welsh. And President Mnangagwa wouldn't do this if he does not intend to lose the elections. It's clear where this roadmap is going. What are your views on the amendment, the judiciary, the appointment of prosecutors, the interfering with devolution before some of the provisions are being implemented? To me, that says it's a flashing red light to 2023. Am I exaggerating things?
Far from it. You are not exaggerating at all. Let me contextualize this in its historical context. For some of us who spend a great deal of our younger lives struggling for a new constitution, from the days we were teaching at the University of Zimbabwe to the days we were in the Constitutional Assembly, National Constitutional Assembly. You recall I was the spokesperson of the Constitutional Assembly. And for me personally, one of my great satisfying moments was the day Zimbabweans voted in a referendum for a new constitution. Some of us genuinely believed that this was the first phase of a break with the past. Here we were, here we had not a perfect document, but a document far superior than many in the world, a compromise document, to which everybody signed up, whether you're in ZANU-PF, MDC, or whatever political formation you're in. We all signed up to this constitution. We took to the people. The people voted overwhelmingly for it. And it had certain fundamental features of it. The independence of the judiciary, the moving away from an imperial presidency, ensuring that elections will be free and fair, trying to create independent institutions, in particular electoral ones. And for me, when we voted for that constitution, I thought at last we are moving in the right direction. So it is very distressing that so soon after that referendum, so soon after that constitution was adopted, not only have we literally packed the constitution and ignored it, but we've begun to actually claw back on it. For me, one of the things that comes to mind looking back is that in spite of all Mugabe's faults, in spite of all the terrible things that were done under Mugabe's rule, the one thing that Mugabe never managed to do was to capture the judiciary. They will try, they will do all sorts of things. The magistracy in this country remained largely free, largely independent, to release people who were being wrongly detained, to acquit people who were being falsely accused of crimes, to allow people out on bail in terms of the bail rules of this country. Regrettably, what has since happened, what this particular regime has succeeded where Mugabe failed, is the capture of the judiciary. And that blesses all of us, blesses the liberties of all of us, blesses the rights of everybody, blesses our very independence in jeopardy. Because the moment you have a judiciary that is controlled almost 100% by the executive, it is as if you have taken a pen and erased liberty, freedom, and everything one by one.
Welsh, distressing. I'm looking for a stronger word than distressing, because this assault on our democracy, this assault on our constitution, and interesting that your last statements right now, just they mirror my fear that whilst Robert Mugabe was this monster, what Mnangagwa is turning out to be, because of the constitutional changes, none of us is safe. Because if I can't run to a judge to make a ruling on a case fairly, I'll give you an example of me, they're taking away my citizenship. I went to a court. I was confident that I'll get a fair trial. I got my citizenship back. I'm not so sure that were I to go to court, not so sure. I know that a judge who's going to preside over any case that I face is going to be a judge who's been captured. That's frightening.
Extremely frightening, because at the end of the day, the guarantee of your liberty, the guarantee of the constitution, the guarantee of everything that we stand for are the courts of the country. The moment you can make no distinction between a minister and a judge, between a soldier and a judge, the moment you are not certain...
A party activist and a judge?
Exactly. Name it. So the moment all these lines are blurred, it basically means nothing is safe. The irony of it is not those of us in the opposition, not just the human rights defenders, not just ordinary people, but the ZANU people themselves, the soldiers themselves are not safe. Because eventually, in court, because this is not a revolution, there's the expression that at one point or another, the revolution will eat its own children. They will come for each other. And if at the end of the day, we at least preserved the independence of the courts, we will all at least have the feeling of safety that we can go somewhere for an adjudication that will look at my case independently and save justice at the end of the day.
Well, as banning as this thing is, what are you as the MDC-Alliance doing? Because for me, elsewhere in the world, this is where everybody takes to the streets and says, my rights have been taken away. I was saying to somebody that It's as if somebody in ZANU-PF every evening decides, how are we going to mess up the lives of Zimbabweans? Like they did with electronic passports the other day. What are you guys doing?
All we can do, and what we are doing, is to mobilize people, is to go to communities. You would have seen President Chamisa doing his rural interface. He has practically now been to each and every rural province in this country, except for the Midlands. He's still due to go to the Midlands. We have seen the response of the people to these interfaces that he is having. It is false to believe that the rural voter is a ZANU supporter, that the rural voter is happy with the condition of the country, with the condition of the people. They are not. But what we can do peacefully and lawfully, and what we can do with our commitment to constitutionalism, with our commitment to legality, in spite of all the obstacles which are being placed on our way, in spite of all the threats to President Chamisa, for instance, in spite of all the threat of doing harm to him, I can tell you that as we speak, he was in Bulawayo recently, and someone decided to say that he was going to visit victims of dysentery in Chabalala, and ZANU-PF went into wild mode, organizing to prevent him from. What sort of a country prevents political people from interfacing with ordinary citizens? What are you hiding? But I digress. The answer to your question is that we are doing everything, if you like, to remain embedded in communities, to talk to people, to mobilize people, to basically tell people that there is an alternative Zimbabwe. There is a better Zimbabwe. And it is within our power, if in all our millions, we go and vote for change in this country, we go and vote in particular for Chamisa in the next elections. If we vote overwhelmingly in one direction, an election is unstill.
Are you encouraged by what you're seeing around voter registration for 2023? Are there any things that are worrying you, any red flashing lights?
There are lots of things that worry us.
Let's talk about that.
Lots of things that worry us. Firstly, it is worrying that so far we are not yet receiving the enthusiasm, in particular from young people, that we expect. We expect the number of young people taking their future into their own hands to be higher than they are at the moment. So it's sort of disappointing, but it is our job, it is our work to change it, and we're working to change it. Secondly, it is worrying us that there is a determined effort by the state to delay, to prevent voter registration. You will know that we had been told that there will be a voter registration outreach in December. December is here. We've been told it has been postponed indefinitely, and we asserted that this is deliberate to ensure that during the festive season, when people are not at work, people will not have the opportunity to go and register. We are concerned that it is also an attempt to ensure that those Zimbabweans who are in Botswana and South Africa and Zambia will be here during the holidays, will not be able to register. If you push it to February, March, you are excluding those from registering. And also, it ensures that the younger people, who are the ones who are not on the voters' roll, the ones who were not yet 18 in 2018, will not be able to register. You probably do this minimally at the last minute, in a hurry, to ensure that you remain with you and me, the old ones, on the voters' rolls, who are more likely to say, well, change is not possible, continue with the status quo. So all of these things are worrying to us, but it's our responsibility to make sure that notwithstanding all of these obstacles, we do all we can to ensure that as many people as possible register, as many young people, regardless of whether they're in urban areas or they're in rural areas, they register so that they can take their future into their hands.
As Nyaradzo, we strive to continuously bring convenience to our clients. Nyaradzo Group is proud to introduce Sawi, a new virtual chatbot assistant on WhatsApp. With Sawi, you are now able to interact with us from the comfort of your home and can be assisted anytime via WhatsApp. With life assurance products, diaspora products, applying and assessing your policy, payment platforms, claims information, and any other queries concerning payments, policy information, or products and services. Simply WhatsApp Sawi on +263 712 992892 or register and start interacting and receiving notifications from Sawi on WhatsApp. Now, join in and experience a new level of convenience 24 hours a day with Sawi.
Welshman, we have been here before in terms of the worries that you have, in terms of knowing that, to use a phrase that's become fashionable, that the environment is rigged, the terrain is rigged. Do you as MDC-Alliance have minimal participation conditions so that the public is clear? If ABCD is not there, we are not going to be part of this. We're not going to be part of this charade. It's not a democracy. Do you have those? Are you contemplating those so that you don't raise the people's hopes for them to be crushed?
We do not want Trevor to be sending mixed signals to people. We don't want to be saying to people there's an alternative that route that you can take to change other than voting when we have not thought out that alternative route. Our position is that the only democratic way, the only peaceful way, notwithstanding whatever obstacles are placed in the way of democracy and in the way of people, is an election and the right to vote. So we are doing everything to achieve that. It doesn't matter, even if the environment is rigged. Millions of people determined to achieve change. Millions of people determined to achieve change. Millions of people determined to protect their vote on the day of voting and on the day of counting cannot be rigged. That I am certain of, that we are certain of, which is why our message is consistent. We can beat these people at their game. We can win an election. We have won these elections before. We have been rigged before because we have not in the past mobilized sufficient numbers of people to overwhelm the rigging. And we think if we can overwhelm the rigging, a change will come to this country.
Are you getting through? Is that message getting through to the public?
Yes, I believe we are getting through to the public. I believe those who are listening us today are getting the message also. I believe that in the rural interface that President Chamisa has been doing, that message of hope, that message of belief. In fact, I must say that one of the things that people have been saying to President Chamisa, don't ever contemplate walking away from the election. Trust in us, believe in us. So the people are very clear to us. Don't contemplate walking away from the election. We will fix this thing. So the response as far as we're concerned is encouraging, is promising. What matters is that on the day of the counting, every vote is made to count.
Well, shall we take you to, you and I grew up almost, together. Ziligaza together. University together. In Magwegwe, when we grew up, Welshman, my mother in the evening would give me 2 2 bottles of milk and put 2.5 cents in each one of them. At 6 p.m., I'd put the bottles outside, go to bed, get up in the morning. There's 2 bottles of milk, one with a yellow top, the other one with a green top. It was full cream milk, and the other one was light milk. If I do that today, the 2 bottles will be gone, not to talk about the money, it will be gone. That's the first story that I want to share with you. The second story, I was having a haircut, and my barber shares a story. He says, these days it's so, you get into a combi, you are harassed by the driver and the taxi driver and the guy who collects the money. You can't challenge them because they will do something to you. And I say to him, in the combi, is there MDC and ZANU-PF? He says, no, it's just us alone. So I said, exactly my story. It's not MDC and ZANU-PF that are a problem. It's you and the people in the combi. Point number 1. Point number 2, the people would have stolen the bottle in Magwegwe today would not be MDC and ZANU-PF, it would be us. The point I'm trying to make, and I want to hear what your pushback is, Welsh, is that the 30 years of ZANU-PF brutality, dictatorship, has changed our DNA. It's changed who we are. What's your response to that?
I will say a greater part of the change that you are referring to has not even taken place in the 30 years. It has taken place since the coup in 2017. You probably could have gotten away with the bottle and the 2.5 cents in 2016. You could have. Why is that so? They found the man, but not now. 100%. Why is that so? Because we have in this normalized extreme corruption in this country. If there is anything that has happened since the coup, is that we have a government in place which people are watching, where looting is free for all. I used to, may his soul rest in peace, used to fly sometime with Simon Kaya Moyo, the late from here to Harare, and ZANU-PF as he was, and he used to make the joke, Prof, lapa kuyadliwa, kuyakapulwa. Basically saying the corruption was now so pervasive, people were not just eating using their hands and fingers and all their arms, and that's the level of corruption. And it is that corruption where everybody thinks it's a free for all. And again, I refer to President Chamisa on this. I always say to him, your biggest challenge should you get to State House in this country will not even be about economic policy, about all those important things that we need to do to fix the country. Your biggest challenge will be how to deal with corruption in this country. It's so pervasive, it's so deep, it's so entrenched. Everybody believes that they must do a corrupt act in order to get by on a daily basis. And for me, that is the saddest part. And your analogy about the money and the milk, the theft thereof, is symptomatic of a rotten system, a system which is so corrupt to the core from the top. There's an expression that a fish rots from the head, right? And that is where we are in this country. It's so sad. I just to give you another anecdotal thing, I had a client come to my office whose farm has been invaded by Chinese miners who have no permit, have been invaded by Magorogozas, and he was telling me, look, I went to the police for help. The police were keen to come, And they came in their numbers. The first day, they talk to people, tell them they must leave. And he says, little did I know that they were there simply to establish contact, so that these panas and all of these Chinese people on the farm will start to pay tithe, as it were, to the police, so that they now collect. So the people are still there. The police are coming in regularly to collect their share of the gold. And this is yesterday. This is yesterday.
I'm laughing, but that's a heartbreaking Welsh. We are a broken society. Does Nelson Chamisa get that? That the challenge, like you're putting it, is not the roads, it's not the infrastructure. The challenge that he faces is how he's going to change that and how he's going to change that.
Absolutely. I think he as a leader understands that. I think the collective leadership of the MDC-Alliance understands that. And the most difficult thing is actually to change the mindset of the people. But leadership sets a good example. If you have a leadership which leads by example, you have a leadership which is incorruptible, a leadership which does no shortcuts, a leadership which punishes the corrupt, which allows the law to take its course on corruption and on all illegalities, people will quickly realize that indeed this is a new dispensation, not a fake one. This is a new dispensation that we must go back to our values of humanity, we must go back to our values of respect, we must go back to our values of hard work, our values of honesty, so that we can build our country.
Are you surprised by the way things have turned out?
In fact,
was I naive? You are not naive? Talk to me about that.
In fact, even without rephrasing, I was going to say that yes, I was and I am as disappointed as you were, but I was not and I'm not surprised. As a student of history, as a student of constitutional history, as one who spent a great part of his younger thinking life teaching constitutions and teaching comparative constitution, I knew instinctively that nothing good ever comes from a military coup. I knew. When it was time to march, I was here in Bulawayo, I was supposed to lead the march here, when Ncube was doing his Asante San statement. I refused to do that work because everything in me just told me that this was going to end badly, because unconstitutional ruptures basically set wrong precedents. And on the first day of the processes leading to the coup, we're actually having a meeting of the MDC-Alliance at Tsvangirai's house. And I was chairing that meeting. And Tsvangirai was already unwell. He was in the house, but he was not in the meeting. A call came through. We were about to do a press conference. And obviously these people were connected everywhere. It means some of the people were with us, were in direct comms with those who were carrying out the coup. A call came through. Tsvangirai's PA said, I must come and take that call. The person introduced themselves as a Lieutenant General so-and-so, and say, whatever you do, do that press conference. If for 1 second you condemn what we are doing, we will be there. We will be there, and you will not like our boots, right? So I said, okay. So
you have never shared this anywhere.
No,
You're sharing this for the first time.
I haven't.
Wow.
I haven't.
A world exclusive for you right there. Please proceed.
So I put the phone down, went back, and said, guys, this is the call that we just got. The rest is history. The rest is history. But I'm sharing this in order to say, if that act, if it was an act of liberating us, it would not have started, for me personally, with that threat. The very fact that there was that threat told you that nothing good was going to come out of this. Right? I take no pleasure in saying that I knew. I also secretly hoped that maybe, just maybe, maybe we might have a break with the past.
It's called a delusion of relief, you know, because you are pressed so hard. You're hoping that, wow. Let me press you now on you are a student of constitutions and constitutionalism. There's a sour taste around the way that Nelson Chamisa took over the leadership of MDC. Do you concede that it was problematic? How do you explain it?
Difficult, tough question. I may say, with the benefit of hindsight, people may say a lot of things. With the benefit of hindsight, people might say things could have been done differently and the outcomes might have been different in terms of the judicial processes which led to the chaos we have now in Parliament and so forth and so on. I concede that. But let us understand that at that time, the constitution these guys were using, the MDC-T constitution, gave what appeared to be the options which were exercised. Let me blunt as I understood it at that time. As I understood it at that time. It was being said, and there was the script of the constitution, that the National Council of the MDC-T, in between Congresses, had the authority and the power to exercise the authority of Congress. And it was argued at that time that it was best for the National Council to exercise that authority of Congress in order to avoid having to go to a Congress when an election was only a few months away. So a deliberate choice was made. Let us invoke those constitutional provisions. Let the National Council appoint an interim president, and later let it appoint a substantive president so that we go to an election without having to go to a divisive Congress. So that choice was made. It turns out that on the construction of the courts later on, this should not have been the choice that was made. But it was made in good faith for a good reason. So I think it is wrong to then blame the person of Chamisa, the individual, to say you acted in a manner which was unconstitutional. The collective, some of whom, the committees of this world, some of whom were leading in saying, let us do it this way. And it was done this way. Constitutional provisions were cited, which appeared to legitimately grant that option. So now with hindsight, I say perhaps people should have just pressed themselves up for a Congress and say, so be it. However difficult, whatever potential of being divided by ZANU-PF, let's go for it. Chamisa still was the most popular among the contenders, and I have no doubt that he would have won that Congress, hands down. So with the benefit of hindsight, it could have been done differently. But let us remember that the choices were made in good faith, were made with the Constitution in front of people, and the rest is history.
The problem with that, and I hear you completely, is that as the opposition trying to replace a corrupt political power, a party rather, that doesn't respect its own constitution, that doesn't respect the constitution of the country, the bar is higher for the opposition. And in this instance, as you're saying, with the benefit of hindsight, it does look like you failed to make the bar. It raises questions. Point number one. Point number two, that Welshman comes at the back of the conduct by MT, may his soul rest in peace, which caused the major division, which caused you to leave MDC in the first instance. So if this political party is already showing us a trend and the pattern that they're no different from ZANU-PF when it comes to observing their own constitution, when it comes to being law-abiding their own laws, respecting their own constitution, how do we trust them to run a country and not expect them to behave like ZANU-PF? Talk to me about that.
Trevor, there was no deliberate opting out of the party constitution, none whatsoever. What was done was to look at the constitution and to then look at the political challenges and the political options. A particular option to avoid a Congress during an election campaign season was taken. A specific constitutional provision existed which said the National Council could do this in express terms. And people opted for that in good faith. Fair and fine. The Supreme Court disagreed and elected another option. But let us remember this. Let us remember this. Democracy is not innate in human beings. Democracy is not inborn in human beings. Democracy is fought for every day. All our best instincts as humans are, in my view, anti-democratic. You offend me, I want to hit back. You do this, I want. But those are not the civilized democratic ways of doing this. So we have to constantly fight for them. And in the MDC-Alliance, we are committed to this. We know it is difficult. We know it is not easy. The day we say it's a walk in the park, then we know we have lost it. We must constantly reinforce our commitment to democracy. We must constantly remind ourselves that where we fail, where we fall short, we will strive to do better. And that's our commitment to the people of Zimbabwe. I disagree that there is any similarity at all with ZANU-PF. There isn't. Yes, we could do things better in some instances, but there is no similarity, there is no chalk and cheese. We and ZANU-PF are literally chalk and cheese. We will never kill people in order to get into power. We would never deliberately trample on the freedoms of the people. We will not, on any given day, capture the judiciary so that we perpetuate our own power. So we are very clear in that we are very different. That leads me to this. You have a current regime which believes that they are in power for power's sake. Again, the contrast with Mugabe. Whatever Mugabe did, they remained at the very least an ideological, rhetorical commitment to the cause of the people, even if sometimes it was fake. But they always articulated an ideology of service to the people, even when they were serving themselves. But we now have a regime which is unable to articulate an ideology about service to people. It is a regime which articulates an ideology of service to themselves, which is why earlier on you say President Mnangagwa comes back from Zambia and says the things he said, because it's not about people anymore. So, but we are light years from that sort of thing.
The point made. Let me, keeping within the MDC thing, one of the most disconcerting things, I think, to your supporters, to me, as a former supporter of MDC, is the divisions within MDC. You know, how do you explain that? Is there, we had Patisanyati sitting where you're sitting, and Patisanyati says, I have decided I'll never engage in politics because I have read a book that tells me that in politics there's always a CIA or CIA hand. Do you ascribe this to the state maneuvers, intelligence maneuvers to divide MDC? How do you explain Komichi and them doing what they're doing, Monzora doing what he's doing? How many MDCs do we have? 10 MDCs? I mean, how do you explain that, Welshman?
I think there are various explanations in terms of the things that have happened historically, in terms of things that continue to happen. The most obvious one is infiltration, particularly now.
You're convinced there's infiltration?
There is always infiltration. There is always infiltration. Right? Which is why you have counterintelligence, you have military intelligence. Now that you almost have direct military rule, which all soldiers, all militaries believe in, that you must always be one step ahead of your enemy.
I don't usually barge in. I want you to finish that thought. But I thought, as you're finishing that sentence of yours, for me it then says, the men and women who are in opposition wanting to give us a new government are so easily bought. I thought they stood for principles and values. Let me park that as you answer that question.
I'll build from
yeah, absolutely.
It's not always that people have been bought. Many have been deployed for years and years.
I see.
You and me at university, you knew there were students, even in student politics.
So who were part of the system?
Who were part of the system, who came to study as officers, intelligence officers. We lived with them then. They were there everywhere. In this hotel, at the reception there, they are deployed there. Lots of, doesn't matter where you go. There are state agents everywhere. And I was saying before you
I rudely interrupted you.
No, it wasn't rude. It was, I was saying, now that we have an indirect military rule, you have people who, by strategy, believe that you must always infiltrate the enemy. So expect that as a matter of state policy, infiltration is everywhere. So not just infiltration of those who are already employees being deployed to join, but also converting genuine cadres to be informers. The struggle against this regime, Trevor, has been long. It has been very long. I will give you, let me not name him, one of the people recently defected to ZANU-PF, in that those people were welcomed at State House. One of them said, but we're together, you lost properties, your home was destroyed, how do you end up there? Says, look, I am almost 70 years old, I have nothing, I have been in this struggle, and maybe it's time that I look after Trevor, he says.
Look at after number one.
Exactly. Right. So that happens. Thirdly, so I'm saying that the struggle has been long and has been challenging, and people get tired. People get tired. People seek shortcuts. And they contribute to the divisions. But fourthly, individuals are individuals. There is inherent overambition. Some of the people who jumped onto the God sent to them Supreme Court judgment, in our assessment, some of them were not necessarily agents, some of them were not bad, but they simply saw a shortcut to the top
to where
of the
they've wanted to go.
And they jumped into that bandwagon. But also remember, I want you, the ordinary viewer of your show might not know. If you look at the MDC-Alliance Gweru Congress, each and every person who jumped onto the bandwagon of the Supreme Court lost. The members, the owners of the party rejected them. Whether they were contesting for vice president, they were contesting for being treasurer general, for whatever national chairman, it is a combination of people who lost. Only one person there. A woman won the position she was contesting. The rest lost. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this in order to say, here are individuals who are seeing themselves as vice president of MDC-Alliance. Here's an individual who is seeing himself as president or whatever.
But the people spoke in a different way.
The owners of the party said not yet. But the ambition which overleaps itself, you recall, you read Shakespeare in Ziligas, I remember, where you get the scene for Lady Macbeth, literally a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah.
Most of these characters, they basically dumped their political careers in the dustbin by being over-ambitious, wanting to get to where the people speaking at Congress said you shouldn't get there. So all these things combine to sometimes create this. But it doesn't matter. What matters is what does the ordinary voter in Zimbabwe believe can deliver change to them. I have no doubt in my mind that at this particular historical moment, the people of this country see Chamisa as their best hope for change.
As Nyaradzo, we strive to continuously bring convenience to our clients. Nyaradzo Group is proud to introduce Sawi, a new virtual chatbot assistant on WhatsApp. With Sawi, you are now able to interact with us from the comfort of your home and can be assisted anytime via WhatsApp. With life assurance products, diaspora products, applying and assessing your policy, payment platforms, claims information, and any other queries concerning payments, policy information, or products and services. Simply WhatsApp Sawi on +263 712 992892 or register and start interacting and receiving notifications from Sawi on WhatsApp. Now, join in and experience a new level of convenience 24 hours a day with Sawi.
There's that infiltration, there's people being ambitious, but there's been rumors, Welsh, that you yourself are a CIO plant. Is that part of the infiltration? Is that part of shaking the tree? What's your response to that?
Let me perhaps say that as a person, as a human being, one of the most hateful things which has been said about and of me is that very accusation that I am a CIO agent. When I was younger, particularly around the first split of the MDC in 2005, and that was being thrown at me, I would be so distressed. There were times when I would simply stay at home because I found it extremely, extremely hurtful. But it's self-evidently not true. It is a lie, and regrettably those who started propagating it knew it to be a lie, and it has been repeated and repeated. Not only have I never worked as an agent of the system, I have never been a member of ZANU-PF, and I can confidently say I will never be a member of ZANU-PF. The only time I ever had a ZANU-PF card was during Gukurahundi. My mother in the village was forced to buy ZANU-PF cards for all of us. And so I became a nominal member of ZANU-PF with a card that my mother bought in the village, because during the Gukurahundi days, they were being forced at home to bear allegiance to ZANU-PF. But otherwise, I'm not a member of ZANU-PF. I have never been, never will be.
Where do you think the rumors come from? Why? What's the intent behind it all?
I think in my case, it was always to delegitimize, to sort of disqualify the issues that were dividing us at that time. And in order not to deal with the issue for debate, you end the debate by calling someone a CIO. It's not different from those who grew up in a village. You know that the moment you are unable to sustain an argument and you say to somebody, call them by any part of their mother, you are bringing the argument to an end and transferring it to a physical fist fight. So for me, if you are unable to debate somebody, if you are unable to deal with the issue over which you are in disagreement, you then label them, and therefore whatever they say is sort of delegitimized.
Welsh, you've just shared a painful moment now. You also have another painful moment, and I'll read your words, which for me touched me. This is following the MDC division. And if these are not your words, let me know. But you are quoted as saying, "The most painful and hurtful period in my life was October 2005 to February 2006, the period of the MDC split. No other period in my life have I suffered more pain, more hurt, more agony. It is something I reflect on regularly and ask if we could have done things differently. If there could have been another outcome. I regret the split of the MDC daily, but I take heart in that if the situation that we were in was to present itself again, I would take the same route." Are those roughly your words?
Correct.
Do you still regret?
Yes, absolutely. Everything that you're reading there is something I felt very closely and felt the pain of it. Remember that the idealism around the formation of the MDC, the coming together of progressive forces in the country to present a united front against ZANU-PF, to present an alternative to what we had at that time. It is something that I held dear. I didn't have to be doing politics. I was dragged to do politics largely by Gibson Sibanda, and I agreed that I will do politics for a short while. And genuinely believed that I was putting my shoulder on the wheel to contribute to the progress of this country. And the things which divided us in 2005 went to the heart of what we believed we were about. We believed that the things we were doing were about an alternative democracy, a democracy where the collective, as opposed to the singular, the individual decides, where we debate. And if the debate is won by a majority, you go by the majority, no matter how wrong you think the majority were. Those were the things that we believed in, I believed in dearly.
I think you just hold the thought again. I just want to set the context to the viewers so that they understand that there was a decision whether MDC should participate in the Senate elections. And your National Council voted 33 to 31 for participation. MT, may so rest in peace, came and took a position that was contrary to the majority position taken by the National Council. Am I capturing things right there?
Yes, you are. But let me add a little bit detail. It was not just the vote on that day. We had debated this weeks prior to the vote. The debate had been inconclusive. We had then said, look, what must guide us are the views of the people through the provinces. So we instructed the 12-party provinces to go and do the consultations and report back, so that we will then be guided by the views of the membership of the party. But that didn't end the debate. It was then said, no, that was just meant to be a guide. We must now individually take a decision as National Council. We then re-debated again. I recall Roy Bennett, again may his soul rest in peace, saying, whatever you do, don't vote. That will be the biggest mistake that you make. That will be the, and lots of people said, let's not vote. Unfortunately, a lot of people said, let us vote. And expressions like umlamla nkunzi vote were used. So eventually we voted. I said, fine, we voted. And the vote was as you say. And regrettably, our leader then, MT, said, look, you may have voted, but I will not be bound by the vote. And he went and did a press at his house to announce a different result. That was the trigger of everything else. So we were confronted then by the challenge, do we accept that one or two persons can overrule a collective decision of an organ, the supreme organ of the party in between congresses. So that was the challenge. This is why it was very distressing. This is why you are literally caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you turn around and say, that's fine, we are a democratic party, but this has happened, let us ignore it, or do you say, look, this is a red line, and so forth and so on. So this was the challenge at that time, and it was a painful challenge. If one could alter the facts, I could alter the facts.
Press rewind. But you say in the statement, were this position to present itself, you'll take the similar route, meaning you believe you were.
Yes, it basically means if you have a choice between standing by the decision of the collective and standing by a position of an individual, I would still stand by the decision of the collective. That's basically the essence of that, however painful it is, no matter how painful it is. Otherwise, we are not a democrat at the end of the day. It's not dissimilar. You go to an election, a national election, and the majority vote for a particular person, and you then say these people are wrong. The minority are right. Therefore, the minority candidate wins. It just jars, and it's very difficult to relate to it if you have spent most of your life fighting for democracy and for the right of the majority to decide, of course, subject to the rights of the minority.
What was it painful for you? How did you deal with the situation where you take over from Tambara as the president of MDC, your faction, I'll call it that way, and Robert Mugabe refuses to swear you in as deputy prime minister? How did you take that? Because I don't remember ever reading. Share us your thoughts, your intimate thoughts when this man refused. I could feel your pain, but I never got to talk to you about this. How did that?
It was difficult, but again, not unexpected. As it turns out, I actually did have a personal one-on-one conversation with President Mugabe at that time in his office. And I tried to understand, but how could he seek to make a decision for the MDC, which had gone to Congress, had a new leadership, and he was bound under the inclusive government agreement to follow the decision of the MDC. And in his way, he says to me basically, look, we are a team. me, Morgan, and Arthur are a team. But you can't replace us. you can't replace us.
You're interfering with the threesome.
Exactly, you can't. So I chuckled and said, but it's not for you to make that decision. And he was casual about it, comfortable about it, that no, in his view, it is wrong for leadership to be changed in the manner that we as MDC had changed leadership. So I read into that. During that conversation, what I read through his different words and explanation was to say, look, you are trying to set a precedent that I can be removed, right? So that's the impression I walked out of his office with on that day, that if we allow you to do this, you'll basically be allowing you to say, maybe ZANU-PF can remove me or somebody can remove me. So I just walked out of there and look, I can understand this man. This has become about him rather than about the MDC and its leadership.
Well, when we started, I did mention that you are a lawyer, you are a businessman, a full professor. You've lectured in constitutional law. You've participated in the formation of some of the most important NGOs in this country, Zim Rights, NCA, and that kind of stuff. You have been Minister of Commerce in Zimbabwe, so I rub shoulders with powerful people like you. Tell me, when you look at your life, what has surprised you most about your life?
Well, if let me understand it broadly. I know this question can mean 2 or 3 things, but the meaning I ascribe to it. The one thing that sort of surprised me the most in my public life was that it is possible for national leaders to publicly commit to sign an agreement, to agree to abide by it, and then to simply then refuse to honor that agreement. That is one thing I could not comprehend. The day that the global political agreement was signed, President Mugabe signing, President Mbeki being there, everybody ululating, celebrating, I genuinely thought that adults who are national leaders, when they commit their signatures
it's making me laugh because you're as naive as me as a politician, but anyway.
So
yeah,
you are right. Maybe it was the naivety of it all that sort of shocked me, because I didn't. During almost the 5 years in the inclusive government, I kept doing this debate with the colleagues in ZANU-PF, but you signed up to this. How can you now refuse to implement? The president of your party signed up to this. The president of the country signed up to this. How could you, in honor, then behave as if you did not sign up to it? So this is the sort of thing that I think came as a surprise to me, and sort of made me lose a great deal of faith in humanity and a great deal of faith in political leaders, because I was brought up to believe that when you give your word, when you sign up to something, you must be man enough to honor your word, no matter how difficult it is. When I grew up, my father would say, you gave your word, right? Whatever the pain, you must honor your word. And this I couldn't understand. Exactly.
Let's go to exactly what you've just said now. When you grew up, where were you born? Our viewers love to know where my guests were born, where they grew up. Clearly, there was a set of values that formed who Welshman is. The Welshman who, when coming in here, I say to a politician, and you say, no, I'm not a politician. Tell me, where were you born? Which schools did you go to?
Well, I was born, obviously, in Rhodesia, in a village called Maboleni, which is some 50 kilometers from Gwelu, just after Luagwero Mission. I grew up there, went to primary school 5 kilometers from my homestead, which was called Makulambila Primary School. So for 7 years, we walked the 5 kilometers to 5 kilometers back, which was approximately 10 kilometers each day, minimum. And of course, after that, when you get home, you will be told the younger boys lost the
cows, the
cows, in particular the oxen.
Yeah.
So you being the bigger boy, and I look back and say, but why was I thought I was a bigger boy in grade 7? And you will get your Licklinop carry and your dogs. 7 p.m. in the middle of the night, you'll go into the jungle.
I hated that.
And come back with these oxen. And we were so skilled, you know. It would be dark, no moon sometimes, and you were so alert that these oxen will have the bells. And if they'll be sleeping, and if it just shakes once like this, you'll know exactly what direction it came from, and you'll know that is my bell, not anybody else's bell, and you'll go there. So that's where I grew up, and from there I went and did 1 year stint at the SDA Luagwero Mission for Form 1. Then I went to Luveve. That's where.
Are you still a practicing SDA?
Yes.
Okay.
So went to Luveve Secondary for 3 years. Then after that, Mzilikazi, that's where
you came to my school.
Yes,
Mzilikazi High School.
Came to your school,
yeah.
And then did Form 5, Form 6 there. You recall you were 2 or so years behind me, and left you there, went to use it, and you found us, now you came to my university. Found us at UZ, and the rest is history.
And you did, at UZ, you did your first degree in law. What degrees did you walk away with?
At that time, you know, there was the dichotomy between the procedural and the substantive
BL
law, so
and then LLB.
So did the 3 years BL, the 1 year LLB. Then got recruited by Professor Ray Justin, who was...
Is Ray still alive?
Yes,
he is. Yeah, because I see him on Facebook from time to time.
Is,
amazing Zimbabwean, amazing man.
The person with probably the greatest intellectual influence on me, and one of very few white guys that who was not conscious that he was a white man in every respect, and that says a lot.
Absolutely.
And, completely sort of de-racialized as a human being. Then, of course, went and did part of my master's at the University of Oslo on a sandwich program with the University of Zimbabwe. And then came back to UZ and started teaching.
How is farming? Are you enjoying farming? I find farming is the most difficult thing.
It's challenging, but perhaps I do the part of the farming I have a passion for, which is ranching. So what I do is ranching. So I do cattle by and large. It is much easier and less intense than cropping, but sort of it is a hobby, a passion that my father taught me, and one of his pleasures when we grew up was to watch his Mombes and Komazake coming back in the evening.
My assets are walking back.
And raising dust, and we are bringing them back, and he's standing there and watching it. So it is something that I do out of love.
Our viewers who are all over the world love books. Do you have any books that you've read that have made a huge impact that you'd want to recommend to our viewers?
If I had to pick one book, a book of literature to recommend to anyone, it is Charles Dickens' Bleak House. That was my favorite book.
Why?
I think it's classical literature. As a work of literature, it is beautifully written. Also, I suppose, as one who was also attracted to law, it deals with a lot of legal stuff. This estate, which is administered forever and ever until the money runs out, and showing the injustice of the English system at that time. But the more modern book that I enjoy reading is Ngugi's Devil on the Cross. So the younger people who are less likely to relate to the dance, Charles Dickens' Bleak House would probably, particularly those who are politically minded, those who yearn for a sense of justice and who sort of would want to look at African society sometimes in satirical terms, then that's the sort of book that I have read several times.
Wow. And the third one?
The third one, I probably would recommend you back to the one perhaps also with I quote more often than most is Shakespeare's Macbeth. I think it is a classical book in terms of depicting our lives, particularly the tragedies in life, where you say this one a flaw in an individual, and I see it all the time, a tragic flaw, which leads to the demise of an individual. So I still read Macbeth to this day, because it reminds me of the obligation each one of us to identify our weakest spots and work on them and ensure that they do not overwhelm our lives and we end up in tragedy.
Wow, awesome stuff. Have you read, there's a book recommended by James Mshore on Shakespeare and power. It's a beautiful analysis of Shakespeare's writing on power and treason and stuff like that. It's beautiful. It's just come out now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'll send you.
Please send me the details, and then I can look for it. And,
Welshman, thank you so much for the hours that you put in helping write a constitution for Zimbabwe, the global political agreement that brought in the unity government, the work that you still do in the opposition. This is the loyal opposition that should be granted a respectable position in our parliament and in our society. Thank you for the time you've given, Welsh.
Thank you, Trevor. I really have enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allow me, Welsh, to tend to our viewers who are all over the world, who've made this show the success that it has become. Thank you so much for tuning in every Monday at 7 a.m. Central African Time. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, I invite you to click on this red button. You will get an alert that tells you we have a quality conversation ready for your viewing pleasure. We've gone a step further, created a podcast for you. Scroll below this video, you'll find a link to a podcast. We read all your comments, the criticisms, the suggestions as to who should come on. Keep on sharing those and indeed sharing the videos. Until next time, cheers to you all.